We continue now at the top of Daf Yud Aleph from Meseches Beitzah. This is Beitzah Daf 11b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara had asked, how come Beis Hillel and the Mishnah, they permit you to spread out the unprocessed hides in front of people that will tread upon it? That's allowed because otherwise people would not do shchita on Yontif. But when it comes to the chalef, to the fats of the animal, Beis Hillel do not allow you to spread them out, to handle them in a way where you're going to remove the foul odor, even though that also, the reason to do that is that people will be willing to do shchita on Yon. And so the Gemara answers, Hasam over there, meaning by the unprocessed hides, so lo mukha milsa. It's not clear that you're spreading them out for the purpose of tanning them. Mishum dechazi lemizga aleh, because it's fit to sit upon it. People would use it as an area to sit anyways. But over here, asi lemeimar, people are going to come to say, my time was sharuli rabbanon. What's the reason the rabbanon are allowing me to do this with the chaylev? Ki heichi de lo lisrach, in order that it shouldn't spoil, it shouldn't create a bad odor. So mali lemishtachinu. So what's the difference if I spread out the chaylev? Mali lemim lechinu. What's the difference if I salt it? And again, salting it, tanning it with salt is certainly going to be a problem on Yontif. Rashi over here says, "Hasam lo mucha milsa sheteish tichaso letzorech ibud." It's not clear that you're spreading it out to tan the hides. The meimar amar hay deshoru leRabbanan lesita lefnei hadrisam and tzorech Yontif itiru. People might say you're doing it for the tzorech of Yontif. Sha'af tichaso tzorech Yontif, because even spreading out the hides is a tzorech of Yontif. The chazi lemizgala, people use it as something to sit upon. Aval hacha, but over here gabe chalovim. When it comes to the chaylev, when it comes to the fats, kisharis l'shotchan, if you're going to allow the person to spread them out, so mucha milsa shalatikon hachalovim hitarto, it's going to be clear you're doing it in order to so that these fats, they don't spoil. So vasinami limim lechinu. People are going to come and say, okay, if you can do that, then you might as well salt it as well. Umalicha me'avos malachos, and malicha is something that is from the avos malachos, bedavar sheyesh bo ivud. Anything that if you salt it, it can be tanned, that can be one of the avos malachos. Tetanan v'hamolcho v'hamavdo, that's in the list of Mishnah of the avos malachos. Again, over here, when it comes to the chaylev, so people are going to get confused and think that it's allowed. Again, allowed to salt it. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yudah Amar Shmuel. Rav Yudah says in the name of Shmuel, Moleach Adam kama chatichos basar bevasachas. A person's allowed to take salt and salt many cuts of meat in one shot, even though the person only needs one cut of meat. Ravada Barava, Marim Umolach Garma Garma, he would do a harama, he would use basically a halachic loophole, and he would salt one bone at a time. And Rashi over here explains, Vavasachas dechad tircha lekulu, so he would do a bunch of them at once, it was all one tircha anyway, that's not a problem. And then again it says that Ravada Barava used to use a harama, he used to use a loophole, Marim la'achar shemolach zu la'achla hayom, after he would salt one bone of meat to eat it today, so Omer, he would say, you know what, I really want to eat the other one today. Then he would salt that one. So it would end up that he'd end up salting all the meat using this harama, using this artifice. The Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Beishamai Omrim, Beishamai say, Ein Mesalkin es hatrisin b'yomtiv. You're not allowed to remove the shutters on Yomtiv. This is talking about the shutters of the stores, will be explained more in the Gemara. Beis Hillel matir and af lahachzir. And Beis Hillel say not only can you remove the shutters on Yontif, you can even return the shutters to their original place on Yontif. And the case over here, again, as the Gemara will explain, the people used to come, those who had not been fully prepared for Yontif, they would actually take their stuff from these stores on Yontif, and they would settle the accounts later. And so Beis Hillel is saying you're even allowed to remove and put back the shutters of these stores. These were basically almost like carts that were in the street that were stores on Yontif. And so the Gemara says, my trees, and what are these shutters? Amar Ula says, Trise Chanuyos. Again, like we said, they're the shutters of the stores. Rashi over here says, Chanuyos kimotevos hein. They were almost like boxes. V'omdos b'shuk. They stood in the middle of the marketplace. Ve'enon mechubaros lakarka. They were not attached to the ground. This the Gemara is going to mention later. They were actually like kalim. They were not like binyanim mechubar lakarka. They weren't like a house that's attached to the ground. They were considered kalim. And again, it's the shutters of these stores that you're removing so that people can take things that they need on Yontif. V'yomar Ula, and Ula says, Shlosha devarim hitiru sofan mishum tchilasan. There are three things that we allow you to do the end of the malacha because we want to encourage people to do the beginning of the malacha. V'yeluhen, and they are as follows. Or lifnei hadorsan, like we said before, the unprocessed hide, you can lay it out, spread it out in front of those who are going to tread upon it. The idea is this is something that will encourage people to do shchita. If they wouldn't be able to do this with the hides, they would not want to do the shchita at all on Yontif. Utrise chanuyos, the case in our Mishnah right over here. You have the shutters of the stores. So we're allowing the person to return, like Beis Hillel said, you can even return the shutters to the stores in order to encourage people that they should open up. They should open up the shutters and allow people to take for the tzorach of Yontiv. And also, let's say you had a bandage in the Beis HaMikdash, the Kohen had a bandage, they're not supposed to do the malacha if they have something as a hefsek, something that is in between them and the malacha. They'd have to remove the bandage, and we allow them to put the bandage back on top in the Beis HaMikdash, back on the wound in the Beis HaMikdash, in order to encourage them to take it off. Rashi over here says, or lifnei hadorsan hutra shtichasan mishum shchitasan. Again, like we said, we want to encourage the shchita, so we allow you to spread out the hides. Trise chanuyos hutra chazarasan mishum silukan. We want you to remove the shutters, so we allow you to return the shutters. And v'chazaras ritia b'Shabbos perakal gadol amar hamareach ritia b'Shabbos chaya mishum emachek b'mikdash l'kohen shalaka biyadav etzarich lavod avoda. The case is like this: the person has they have this bandage on their wound, and they need to do the avoda, the kohen. V'litol ritia me'al yado shalote chatzitza ben yado la'avoda. They want it to be that there's not going to be a chatzitza, there's not going to be a separation between the kohen's hand and the avoda. So machzir haritia la'achar avoda. But they allow you to return it after the avoda. The lo sharis leila hachzir, because if you don't allow the kohen to return it, lo shakale meikar is going to end up not taking it in the first place. He's going to end up again having this chatzitza during the avoda. And the Gemara continues, V'rachva amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rachva says in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, an additional case, Af haposea chaviso umaschil b'isaso al gav haregel. Even somebody who opens up his barrel and begins his dough on the regel. Rashi over here explains, V'rachva amar Rabbi Yehuda, yesh mefarshim safik mishmei de Rabbi Yehuda nesiya, safik mishmei de Rabbi Yehuda. Some say it's a safik exactly who he said this in the name of. And Rashi continues, V'ani omer, and I say, Lo ra Rachva's Rabbi Yehuda nesiya. The Rachva never saw Rabbi Yehuda nesiya. Because he was from Pumbedisa, we never find that he went to Eretz Yisrael. Also, sometimes the Gemara mentions that the person is so careful to learn directly from his Rebbe, like Rachva from Pumbedisa. So Havalon Lamemer, the Gemara should also say that Afilu Sveike de Gavri Goris, that Rachva from Pumbedisa even taught the Sveikas who exactly said what when we weren't sure who said what. Kedamrina b'd Rav Yehuda b'Kol Shochten, the Gemara makes a similar statement about Rav Yehuda in Chulin. And therefore Rashi over here says, V'nira be'enai, it appears to me, Mishum de Rabo Muvak Haya, that really it's Rachva in the name of Rav Yehuda, not Rabbi Yehuda, but because Rav Yehuda was his Rebbe Muvak, was his main Rebbe, he didn't learn from anybody else, have a Karile Rabbi. He called him Rabbi Yehuda, that you shouldn't make have any confusion with any other Rabbi Yehuda. This was his Rebbe Muvak, but really again, this Rabbi Yehuda is really Rav Yehuda. And Rashi over here continues, let's say you have a situation of a chaver. A chaver is somebody who's very careful about the halachas of tumah. So he's beginning to sell his wine or his loaves of bread to those who are going up for the regel. And now everybody's touching his stuff. Now the halacha is that on the regel we're actually lenient, and we say that the tumah from an amaretz, someone who's not so careful, we consider tahor kol yamos haregel. All the days of the holiday, on the holiday itself, we're lenient. Now, what about that food which now remains? It's left over after the holiday. So, nechliku Rabbi Yehuda v'chachamim per chomer b'kodesh. So, machlokas Rabbi Yehuda and the chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda omer yigmor v'yimchrenu lechaverim ulechol adam. So, Rabbi Yehuda says that you should finish, sell it to chaverim, sell it to anyone. V'yizar shelo yiga amaretz od. But you have to be careful, and amaretz shouldn't touch it any further. The chachamim say lo yigmor v'lo yimchrenu od mishum denitmes beregel b'maga amaretz. The Chachamim say, no, you have to assume that it became Tameh over the regel. Granted, during the holiday, we don't want to embarrass the Amei Aretz and we allow it. But after the holiday, we say, okay, retroactively, we know this was touched by a lot of people and it's a problem. So now Rachva is teaching us to Rabbi Yehuda lo amar yigmor ela mishum tchilasan, that when Rabbi Yehuda over here says you can finish, and again, you can finish and sell it. So that's only because originally we want to give you this leniency. If we don't allow the person to finish selling the products, he's not going to open up the products to sell them in the first place. And that's why, again, it's mishum tchilasan that we're lenient at the end. And so again, returning to the Gemara, even somebody who opens his barrel of wine and begins to sell the dough during the regel, following Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, who says that even after the regel, you can continue to sell it to chaver, meaning you can continue to consider it as being tar, as being pure. That's also mishum tchila, so we want you to sell it during the regel, and the only way the person's going to do it during the regel, if he's allowed to finish selling the remaining after the regel. And so the Gemara continues, or lifnei hadorsan. So the first case of ula over here was, you're allowed to spread out the unprocessed hide in front of those who will tread upon it, because again, we want to encourage you to do shchita. So Tanina, isn't that exactly what we learned in the Mishnah? What is ula adding that we don't already know from the Mishnah? So the Gemara says, Ma'u detema, what might you have thought, Mayu de Beis Hillel, that the reason of Beis Hillel, mishum dechazi lemizga alayu, is because the reason you're allowed to spread it out is because it actually has a use on Yontif. You can use it to sit upon on Yontif. V'afilu me'erev Yontif nami, and even if you would have done the shchita me'erev Yontif, maybe even then Beis Hillel allowed it. Maybe it has nothing to do with the fact that we want to encourage you to do shchita on Yontif. It's something you're allowed to do in any case. So kamash malon, so that's what Ula is coming to teach us. Hitiru sovon mishum tchilasan. We're allowing you to spread it out because of the beginning. We want you to do the shchita on Yontif, the Yontif in, derev Yontif lo. The heter only is because you're doing the shchita on Yontif. If you do the shchita on Yontif, then you have this heter that you can spread it out. And the Gemara says, Trisechanuyos nami tanina. Also the case of the shutters of the stores. That's also learned in the Mishnah. It says, Beis Hillel matir and afla achzer. Beis Hillel say you're even allowed to return the shutters. Same idea. What is Ula teaching us? So the Gemara says, no, ma'u detema, because what might you have thought? Tamayu de Beis Hillel mishum de'ein binyan b'kelim ve'ein stira b'kelim. That the reason of Beis Hillel is because you're not allowed, there is no problem of building with kelim, and there's no problem of destroying with kelim. In other words, it has nothing to do with the fact that it's a store, and it's sorech of Yontif, we want you to open it up for Yontif. The real reason is, these are kelim. There's no problem of binyan by kelim. Ve'afilu debatim nami, even if, let's say, it wouldn't be a store, let's say it would be a similar type of item that you find in the house, you're allowed to take the shutter on and off, wouldn't be a problem. Kamash Malon comes to teach us, no, hitiru sofan mishum tchilasan. We're only allowing it, we're allowing you to return it because we want them to open the store in the first place. Techanuyos in debatim lo. This is allowed by stores, but it wouldn't be allowed in other circumstances, like with houses. And the Gemara says, Chazores Ritia b'mikdash nami tanina. When you return the bandage to the wound in the Beis HaMikdash, that's also a Mishnah. It says, Machzirin Ritia b'mikdash avalo b'medina. It says in the Beis HaMikdash you're allowed to return the Ritia, but you're not allowed to do that outside the Beis HaMikdash. And so the Gemara says, no, again, Ma'u detema, what might you have thought? Maybe the real reason is because there are no derabbanans in the Beis HaMikdash in general. The Beis HaMikdash is a place where we're more lenient. Afilu kohen delav bar avodu. And maybe this leniency would apply to a kohen even if the kohen is not doing the avoda. Kamash Malana comes to teach us, Hitiru sofan mishum tchilasan. We're allowing you to return it because we want the kohen to uncover it. The bar avoda in, the lav bar avoda lo. It's only talking about a Kohen who's doing the avoda, not a Kohen who's not doing the avoda. We'll take a look at a couple of Rashis over here. V'hilkach Beis Hillel afilu b'tevos habayis sharu l'salik dal soseno l'hachzir v'afagav delav l'simchas yontif. You might have thought that Beis Hillel allow you to put the shutters back, even if you have these tevos, these kind of kalim in the house. You can do this, even if it's not for simchas yontif. Kamash Malan Ula. So Ula is teaching us the afagav dein binyan ustira b'kalim, even though there's no binyan or stira by kalim. Ka'asri Beis Hillel midrabanan. Still Beis Hillel say it's a problem midrabanan. Ilav mishum tchilasan. If not for the fact that by the stores we want you to open it. Because by stores that's sarchi aravim in, so that's permissible. But if you have shutters in the kalim in the house, that's going to be a problem. And then also by the bandage, Rashi says when you're tying a bandage, then called davarafu, and also anything that has to do with healing, she'ein malacha ela shvus, it's not a malacha dorais, it's just a derabanan, hu shegazru chacham b'chol refuos, gezerah mishum shchika samanim. That's just a gezeras chachamim, just like all refuos that we're afraid you're going to grind up. You're going to grind up the ingredients in order to make the medicine. And over here, it's interesting because Rashi seems to be saying clearly that the issue of the Ritia b'mikdash is only an issue midrabanan. And as we read Rashi earlier, Rashi over here by Chazoras Ritia, Rashi said, Hamamareach Ritia b'Shabbos Chai Mishum Mamachik. Rashi seems to allude to some kind of Isser Doraisa of Mamachik. You'll take a look at the Bach over here. The Bach says that Rashi shouldn't be there. The Chazoras Ritia Mishum Mamachik b'mikdash Tevis Elam Yusarim. All of these words over here in Rashi are extra. Seems to be because really it is Derabanan. V'nira svar macherim v'chazoras ritia b'Shabbos b'mikdash. You have to put it together. It's v'chazoras ritia, skipping over here to this Rashi. V'chazoras ritia b'Shabbos b'mikdash l'kohen shalaka b'yado, etc. So again, we're not talking about a kind of ritia over here where you're doing mamachik. We're talking just about tying it where it's only going to be an iser midirabanan because of refuah. And the Gemara continues, poseach es chaviso nami. Also the case where the person opened the barrel. That also, what's the chiddush? That's also in a Mishnah. Tanina, we learned in the Mishnah, like we said before, aposeches chaviso, person opens up his barrel, umaschol bisaso, or he begins to sell the dough, al gav regel on the holiday. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Yigmor. Rabbi Yehuda says even after the holiday, he can continue continue to sell the remaining as if it's tahor. The Chachamim say he can't. So again, it's a Mishnah, so what more are you teaching us? And so the Gemara says, no, ma'ud detema, because what might you have thought, tumas amoritz beregel ketara shavi rabbanan, that any tum of an amoritz on the holiday is considered totally pure. V'afa gavdelo hischil nam, even if the person wasn't selling anything, what are you beginning to sell? Kamash Malana comes to teach us, hitiru sofan misham tchilasan, we're only allowing it afterwards because of the beginning, hischil in lo hischil lo. Again, only if he began to sell, but if he didn't begin to sell, he doesn't have this leniency. As Rashi over here says, Ketara Shavir Rabbanan, you might have thought it's considered totally pure. That's relying on a pasuk in Shoftim. And so therefore the reason of Rabbi Yehuda might have been, you might have thought it's because once it's tar, it's tar. Even if he didn't begin selling on the regel. Let's say it just happened to be that an Amoritz touched something on the regel and made it tameh. Maybe even over there, Rabbi Yehuda is saying it's not tameh after the regel. So Rachva is teaching us, no, it's only because he began to sell the stuff on the regel, that's why the leniency applies. And the Gemara continues, V'ula my time, so Ula, he only gave us 3 examples. Why didn't he give this other example of Rachva? And so the Gemara answers, Ula doesn't want to get involved in something that's a machlokas tanoim. That's like we said, it's a machlokas tanoim over here between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, so Ula didn't mention it. So the Gemara says, Hanach nami pluksaninu. Everything over here has been a machlokas. It's all a machlokas Beishamai and Beis Hillel. So the Gemara says, Beishamai, b'makom Beis Hillel ain't a Mishnah. When you have Beishamai against Beis Hillel, it doesn't even count, so it's really not considered a machlokas at all. And the Gemara continues, Mas nisan delo ki haitana detanya. Our Mishnah is not the same as the following Beitzah. The Beitzah says like this. Amar Rav Shimon ben Elazar, Rav Shimon ben Elazar says, Modim Beishamai and Beis Hillel shemesalkin es hatreisen b'yontif. According to this version, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel both agree that you're allowed to remove the shutters of these stores on Yontiv. Lo nechluku el lahachzer. The machlokas is only to return them. Our Mishnah said the machlokas is by removing. Beis Shammai om remain machzir, and Beis Shammai say you can't return them. Beis Hillel om remaf machzir. And according to this Beitzah, Beis Shammai say you can't return them. Beis Hillel say you could. Everybody agrees that you can remove them. And now the Beitzah continues. When is all of this true? When they have a hinge. But if the shutters don't even have a hinge, that involves much less malacha, and therefore everybody agrees that would be mutter. The Gemara says Vatanya, but then we learn in the Beitzah not like that. We learn that the machlokas is when there's no hinge. But when there is a hinge, everybody agrees it's usher, exactly the opposite. So Amar Abaye says like this. There's really 3 types of cases. If there's a hinge on the side, everyone agrees it's usher. If there's no hinge at all, everybody agrees it's mutter. Machlokas is when there is a hinge in the middle. And Rashi over here says, our Mishnah, which says they're also arguing about removing, that's not like the Beitzah. Again, it's got these kind of hinges for the tops of it. That's already like building. We have a Beitzah the opposite, that it's only when there's no hinge. So Amar Abaye says the Beitzah, the partial unplugs of the Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. So again, it goes as follows: Divrei Hakol Asur v'She'ein Lo Tzir Kol Iker Divrei Hakol Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. When there is a tzir on the side, it's for sure a problem. When there's none at all, it's for sure mutter. But b'sheyej lo tzir be'emtza kein plita v'tochven oso b'chur shebe'emtza dofen pesach hatev. If you're just going to stick it in to this hole that's in the middle of the opening over there, so that's where there's going to be a machlokas. We'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph.